Hello Matrix Live and welcome to this new episode with Robin and Timo, who are VoIP engineers at Element, and Florian, who is a cluster expert.
Expert test expert, yeah, so kind of. But yeah, most of the time I'm also asking myself what I'm doing the whole day, right?
All right, and we have a few things to cover today. It's going to revolve mostly around element call and MatrixRTC, so let's dive in directly with one very practical use case. Timo, I've been told that now I can use element call as a telephone.
Yes. This sounds a little bit ambiguous. So basically, Element Call first and foremost was a conferencing software. But in the end, of course, everybody is super interested in having normal phone calls. That's why we call it telephone use case. So it refers to using Element Call as a normal phone call, one-to-one. And that hasn't really gotten priority up to now because we had more fundamental things to solve out. But now we got to the point where our current project is basically making the telephone use case work. And for the users, this basically looks like, or we try to make it look as familiar as possible. So it looks similar to Telegram or WhatsApp. So you press a button and then the other phone will ring. And then there will be a timeout. And if the timeout times out, then you'll get notified. They fail to pick up. And if they don't want to talk to you, they can also decline. And this kind of signaling before the call, that's basically what we call the telephone use case project.
So when you say the telephone rings, I don't need to have Element open in the foreground with my phone unlocked. If my phone is locked, it's going to actually ring like if I was receiving a regular call.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, this is super similar to how other messengers do it. We send a push notification to the other device, and then Element X would handle it as a full screen alert ring. I think that's what they call it. So the phone would ring and you can pick up. It would immediately bring you into the app, start the Element Call widget, and then bring you into a slightly adjusted user experience for one-on-one calls. So it really feels like a normal one-on-one telephone call and not really a full conference.
All right. Littlebus told me that there was a challenge along the way that made you use fun tricks so that you can make it work.
Yes. So basically, we are using a web view for Element Call, which is super cool because it would basically allow Element Call to be a stepstone for any other client to adopt the MatrixRTC technology for calls. And with this being a web view, that saves a lot of resources because we only have to do it once for iOS, Android, and also Element Web. But we also fight with the limits of a web view. And things would be super easy if we could just have one browser engine and that would be perfectly supported. But of course, on Android, we have something different and Firefox is different and iOS, of course, also is different. And it turned out that for devices and not devices, but microphone, camera, and speakers, the APIs are very different in how well they work or how they behave in the first place. And especially iOS, there you have no control over devices whatsoever from the web view. So the only thing you can do is use the browser, the actual operating system devices. And we did some trickery there, so it feels fairly good. In the end, I'm actually quite happy how it turned out. But then those OS devices don't support a dedicated earpiece mode. So we use earpiece internally. We are not sure if that's the exact correct wording, but that means that you can actually hold the phone like this, and it's using the upper speaker and the microphone, but doesn't put out audio through the lower one. That's not supported. So on Android, we can just say use earpiece, and we're done. On iOS, what we do is actually use the stereo panel and then use the normal speaker and reduce the volume by 10x, I think. And that's how we basically fake the earpiece mode. So it feels really well. Like if you have an iPhone and you go into this earpiece mode or into this telephone mode and hold it like this, it will feel okay, but at the end it's just stereo sound play through one of the device. And of course, we also use the proximity sensor to then shut down the screen. So it feels pretty native, especially for WebView, actually.
Yep, just hard pan to the left.
Crazy to me that you had to sort of reverse engineer and re-implement the earpiece mode just to make something as simple as having a phone on your ear just work on iOS.
And another fun fact with iOS 26, the WebView now supports the earpiece mode. So.
Brilliant. Is it going to be transparent though?
Almost all for nothing.
Yeah, well, we need to support the 2 latest versions, so that's
Yeah.
the reason why it's also worth having it. But yeah,
it's important to have backwards compatibility, and I know a few people who are not keen on updating as soon as possible to the latest version of iOS. Timo, we talked about, when preparing the episode, about having multiple MatrixRTC sessions in a room. So my understanding is that what we have with Element Call at the moment is a MatrixRTC session. What's the point of having several ones in a single room?
So for Element Call itself, it might actually sound a little silly because, yeah, why would you have 2 calls in the same room?
You said it.
But the thing is that we're, of course, also trying to build this like fundamental layer for any real-time application on top of Matrix. And the idea is, or it would be a pretty severe limitation if you can only ever have one of those real-time channels or group channels for one room. So that's why the whole thing is or should be designed in a way where you can have a collaborative whiteboard and, let's say, a 2D game, which is also real-time, and maybe a document and a call at the same time in the same room. And especially the kind of document similar thing and call similar thing, that's definitely something we think is super realistic that you want to have. And that needed a couple of changes. So basically, currently, the session is built up of multiple members, and each member has one state key. And we kind of run into a namespace problem. So basically, if you have one name for the user and then one for the or that's it. Like, let's keep it that simple. Or actually do the full thing. So we have one for the user and one for the device. Then we can, of course, have multiple users, multiple devices. That all works. But if we now end up with one user and one device wanting to do the document and at the same time the call, then this namespace is basically blocked. And one could, of course, say, okay, we put an array into the state object, but how we do key sharing and everything, this is not really possible. So, and also how we do auto hangups with delayed events. So we kind of want to have the cleanliness of one state event for one RTC session, for one device, for one member. And basically that needed to change how the keys look like. And we knew this since a long time, but it's always like changing the format of your state key. It's kind of a big breaking thing. So we kind of dragged this along quite some time. And now we finally managed to, for one, put this into the spec properly, so it's phrased in a good way. And on the other side, also add this to all the SDKs. It's not really yet deployed. It's part of the SDKs though.
Yeah, and have we actually had like a working test yet of sort of 2 things running in parallel in a room? I guess we've only ever just sort of changed the name, but that's definitely something we'd be looking into doing soon.
I actually do think with the Nordic Neo board, we did a very short thing, because the cool thing is I'm not sure if they already do state key formatting, but since Element called us, and they still use the old one, they basically are in the main namespace and Element call is in the call sub namespace. So yeah, but it was a very brief test. So we definitely have
it's already a good milestone.
Yeah.
100%, yeah.
And there's one use case you might have having multiple calls in one room, and that is if you're using breakout rooms, then you might have more than one call in the room. Or let's say that is at least one way how you can organize breakout sessions. But yeah, going forward, we're looking more for the non-video conferencing use cases like the Neo board or other nice applications on top of MatrixRTC.
What you are all telling me is that a matrix room can be a foundation for something very complex, like having a call and a whiteboard at the same time and potentially another application. And all that will benefit from all the authentication and all the mechanism that you have in Matrix to secure how events are sent and received.
Yeah, and especially, of course, also device verification and key sharing and the Megalom session and everything. Yeah.
Brilliant. Talking about having multiple things, Robin, I've been told about multi-SFU making it in the spec. Can you unpack that for me?
Right, yeah. So to understand this, we first need to understand how calls actually, how people in MatrixRTC sessions actually connect to one another today, how they send media. So we are using, previously we had been doing sort of a full mesh style of like a connection model where everybody who joins this call, I would send my media to each of you three, and then each of you would send your media to me over peer-to-peer WebRTC connections. But this really doesn't scale. A lot of clients aren't going to have the bandwidth required to upload their media like a dozen times over to all the other participants. And so that's why we have SFUs now. We are using LiveKit SFUs as the current RTC backend that has its own MSC. And what's happening is when the four of us join a call, we might come from different home servers, and these home servers might have their own different SFU infrastructure. And so how do you all sort of get together onto the same call? Well, currently we have something that could charitably be described as an election-based algorithm. But it's more just like whoever happens to start the call, whoever joins the call first, basically decides which SFU this call is happening on. So if I join first, I'm going to say everybody needs to post their media to and receive it from my SFU on robin.town. This works, but it's just a little counter to how we'd like to do things in Matrix. With it being a distributed protocol, a decentralized protocol, we'd really like it if all of the participants in the call could, the resources needed to make this happen could be spread out across their different SFU infrastructures. So what we're doing to address this resource sharing problem is we're now making it so that if there are two of us on one server and two of us on the other home server, we're each going to use our own SFU infrastructure. So let's say Timo and I are on element.io and Timo and Florian are on matrix.org. We connect to the element.io SFU, and then you two would connect to the matrix.org SFU. You would each publish your media there. And now to get each other's media, to get it out of these two different silos, each participant in the call would also connect to the other's SFU. So this means that it kind of strikes a nice compromise between the original full mesh design that we had and the current centralized, more or less, SFU election algorithm that we have. It means that, as many home servers or, SFUs that are being used in the within a single room, that's how many connections you have to make. But critically, you're still only uploading your media to one place, to your home SFU. And that means that clients are still not going to be paying the super high upload requirements, which is particularly a pain for people on limited cable or DSL connections. And so we, as part of a little hackathon at Element, have been starting to implement this idea. And just this afternoon, we got it working, at least a proof of concept of it. So we're excited with sort of getting this idea actually back into the spec or into the MSCs, and then shipping it.
Is it correct? Is it correct to say this is what was originally called the cascading SFUs, or is it something different?
Right. So cascading SFUs is a little bit different. That's the idea where every user in the call only connects to one SFU, not only for sending their media, but also for receiving everybody's media. But then, so, I mean, we can, maybe I can share a little diagram.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you imagine that these are the sort of matrix users, these are the matrix home servers, these blue dots, and then these yellow dots are the MatrixRTC backends. Then, yeah, so everybody would be connecting to their local backend or SFU, and then these two SFUs would be communicating with one another. They just forward their media to one another. And so that is an idea that we were exploring at one point, but it turns out to be quite difficult to implement reliably in practice. And particularly as we wanted to move towards an off-the-shelf SFU solution like LiveKit, which doesn't offer cascading without their, I suppose, their pro plans. We really wanted to stick to what was open source, and that's why we're going for this different compromise.
Right.
And also in terms of what is interesting to mention here is that for the individual clients, here the green dots here, the network bandwidth does not really change between the multi-SFU approach and the cascading. The benefit you get from cascading is let's call it the intra-site traffic. So you only need to transmit a video stream from one SFU to the other ones, and then downstream you can basically multiply it to all the clients who are interested in that. So that benefit you don't get from it, but semantically I'd say the SFU mesh and the cascading are similar, at least.
Yep.
And another side note I would like to do is that just from a architecture spec point of view, this is also a huge step because, as Robin said, like this whole election thing and then having this centralized concept of we decide on one SFU for this call, and then next time we might pick a different one. So it's still federated in some sense. But this way we can now basically phrase the whole RTC membership state object as this user is reachable through this RTC endpoint. And then everybody just tells the other people what SFU they are actually uploading to. And that is a much, much better architecture where it's much more direct and can also, like this general concept of I put out my state event and I tell you where you can find my media. That's basically what we have been aiming for a long time. But then, yeah, we also wanted the SFU from LiveKit and did compromises. But this intermediate step to like a full cascading system is actually really nice in the way we can start phrasing our state event and the MSC based on that. So also from that point of view, it's a pretty big step.
Yeah.
Quite exciting work you're doing here. We have been talking about bandwidth quite a bit, and there is one thing that would concern me if I were to host a SFU is that I wouldn't want everybody to be able to use my SFU. Florian, I've been told about an authorization service that could help me with that.
Yeah, that's true. So let's put this a bit in the context. So we already heard we have a home server where the MatrixRTC session is living in terms of state events. And we do have an SFU, which actually transmits and exchanges the media or the real-time media. But of course, you need to get access to that SFU. And the clue layer here is called the MatrixRTC Authorization service, which under the hood is creating a JWT token for you to access the SFU. And that works the following way currently, that you ask your home server for a so-called OpenID token. You then present this OpenID token to the MatrixRTC Authorization service The service then checks if you have a valid matrix ID, asking the original home server over the OpenID endpoint if that is a valid token. And if that is the case, you are granted access to the SFU. And for simplicity, the first evaluation of that system here is that you just get access to the SFU. However, the LiveKit SFU allows a more fine-grained permission model here. And going forward, and I think released 2 or 3 weeks ago, we shipped version 0.3 of the MatrixRTC authorization service, where you basically can define full access users and remote users. And the full access users do have, well, I need to step a bit further out. The SFU currently is also configured such that it is auto-creating rooms for you. So if you are asking for a room which does not exist, it is automatically created. You can disable that, but then basically you get an error message saying, I can't join that room if it is not existing here. And for the full access users, the JWT service or the authorization service is creating in advance that rooms on that SFU for you. And what does it mean in practice? So basically, if you are starting a call on your home SFU and you are a full access user, you have no problem because the room will be created for you and then you can enter the SFU and everything works. And since we have, as mentioned earlier, this election-based system, it is more or less ensured that you are every time the first one entering that SFU. And if the room already has been created, then all the remote users can join. So we now really have a nice, simple permission model between local full access users and remote users, which ensures that nobody can use your SFU resource who is not intended to use it. And with the mentioned SFU mesh, we can go also a step further where we can also limit the access such that full access users are allowed to publish and remote users are only allowed to subscribe.
Brilliant. And I think it's also worth mentioning that LiveKit is providing a free SFU for the Matrix.org Foundation, for the Matrix.org server. So huge thanks to LiveKit for providing a SFU to the foundation for free. That's as much infrastructure we don't have to maintain, as much bandwidth we don't have to pay for. So if you want to pay them a visit, you can go to livekit.io. Thanks a lot, LiveKit, for supporting us.
Yeah, I, for one, am pretty excited about the multi-SFU and authorization surface changes because it means that I am going to be able to run my own SFU now as well. I only have a little personal home server, and so I was kind of worried about if I start up an SFU, well, for one, I don't want it to get overloaded with random people using it, but also I didn't want to be joining large calls and then suddenly everybody converges on my small little home server and it doesn't have the resources ready to handle this legitimate call either. So yeah, definitely that now it only has to deal with just my publishing. That will make running your own infrastructure possible for a lot more people, I believe.
Yep, absolutely agree. And in the near future, I hope we're going to talk more about how to host Matrix when there are an increasing number of moving parts, which I used to think was a bad thing. And now I have a more mature view, especially on Kubernetes. I think it's not that bad, actually. But that's for later. I've been told that there's something happening in October and we can hear about MatrixRTC and Element Call. What is it?
You mean the Matrix conference?
Of course, right? I mean the Matrix conference. So there's going to be the Matrix conference in October in Strasbourg. It's going to be between the 15th and the 19th of October. Do you have 1, 2, 3 talks there? I don't remember.
We have 2.
Two.
We have a dedicated a talk on Element Call. And then for the machine room, we also have a talk about MatrixRTC. both excited. And if you're interested in the topic, we are there for the whole time. Just talk to us. We can also spontaneously wire up a workshop or whatever, so that will work. We are super excited about the latest news in MatrixRTC and really want to move it ahead.
Yes, and Element is the anchor sponsor of the conference, so there's going to be an Element booth where I guess people can come if they have questions and miss your talks. If you're interested into attending the conference, you can go to conference.matrix.org to grab a ticket. We try to keep the price fairly low so that the community can attend. And yeah, don't wait too much because the tickets are leaving fast. I think we're going to be sold out pretty soon, so don't miss your chance to attend. Is there anything else the world needs to know?
Happy calling.
Flawless. All right, brilliant. Well, thank you very much, all of you, and I'm going to let you return to the Element Hackathon. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah.
I see you around Matrix.
Thanks for having us.
Bye.
Thanks for listening.
Have fun.
Bye-bye.